Hi everyone, Dr. Oz here. Just going to say a couple things this week. We're into week 8 already of 10. So far, the assignments have been really good. Doesn't seem like anyone is having any problems. So there are still a few people who have not sent me any of their assignments. So and some are missing some assignments. Just so you know, even if there's a 0 put in your grade book, if you will complete that assignment and send it to me, you'll still get most of the points out of the 50 back, provided the questions are answered correctly. So it would be a good thing for you to go back, and if you have a 0 in as a grade, to look that assignment up and send it out to me, because some points are better than 0 points. So please get that to me as soon as you possibly can. So this week, I just want to talk a little bit about industrialized agriculture. We started to look at that last week, but we'll, kind of go over a couple things that we did cover last week again, as well as talk a little bit about corn, because corn is a big monoculture here in the United States. So, the problem with corn is that a lot of our farmland is only growing corn or some other type of grain like wheat. And these particular types of plants need a lot of fertilizer and pesticides to keep them looking perfect, right? Especially with corn. I mean, everybody wants a sweet ear of corn. We want perfect kernels, all of those things. So in order to do this, we have to put a lot of chemical pesticides and fertilizers into the ground, and that manure that we're substituting with those chemical fertilizers has to include nitrogen, right? There is no animal on a farm that is going to produce nitrogen that will get back into the soil. Our other important minerals like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, those can be made and put back into the ground, and the plants pick up those minerals in the tissue of the plant, and then the plant gets eaten and it transfers to the tissue of the animal, and then we eat the animal or the plant and get those nutrients. But nitrogen is not done that way. And we talked a little bit last week about nitrogen fixation, and getting that from a nitrogen gas making process that was developed during World War I by Haber and Bosch. And in order to get nitrogen naturally into the tissue, we have to undergo what's called nitrogen fixation. And in order to fix nitrogen, we have to either have lightning strikes, or we have to plant legumes. Legumes are beans, like soybean, for example, because on the roots of those beans grow a bacteria called rhizobium, Rhizobium, the rhizobium bacteria. And this bacteria is capable of taking NH4 from the ground that it's in and converting it into usable ammonia, nitrogen that the plant can take up. So we go from ammonium to a usable nitrogen only because of the presence of this particular bacteria. So that's why you'll see crop rotation on farms. Like, they can't constantly grow corn, let's say, for example, there has to be a period, usually it's every 2 to 3 years, where they're going to plant soybean. And that's just to get the nitrogen back in the soil. Obviously, nitrogen is extremely important because of it being essential, right, for making DNA. And we know that DNA really becomes a template for RNA, which becomes a template for a particular type of amino acid, which we have to have in our bodies, right? We have to have 20 essential amino acids consumed daily. And in order to do that, we have to have nitrogen in our system. Now, there is atmospheric nitrogen, obviously. Great amount of our the air that we breathe is made up of nitrogen. So it is there, but it has to be converted for us in order to use it. Now, long chains of amino acids, right, are what form proteins. So we have to have protein in our diet. So we need to have the nitrogen. In order to get the nitrogen, we need the bacteria, the rhizobium. And in order to get that bacteria, we have to have legumes planted. So it all becomes kind of a cyclical piece. So, take a look at, if you have some time, some of the ways that Monsanto, the pesticide maker, amongst other things, the way Monsanto has patented their corn seed. It's quite an interesting way of looking at why we've gotten away from the family farm. The individual farmer, if they're corn farmers, cannot make it on their own anymore because everybody is planting Monsanto corn seed, even if they try not to, right? The wind will carry pollen from the Monsanto corn into somebody else's field, and Monsanto will come after these people. They have a full crew of full-time people whose only job it is to go around to farms in the United States and see if they're buying Monsanto corn seed every year. It has to be done every year. You can't save seed. And if they're not buying Monsanto seed, then they will get their corn and have it tested. And if it shows that there's Monsanto genes in that corn, then they will go after that farmer. So it's kind of interesting, if you have some time, look up a video on Monsanto corn. King corn is probably it's a good video if you can find that online. Right. So this just explains the nitrogen process that I just talked about. Right, animals can produce a usable form of nitrogen, so they have to get it out of the ground because of the rhizobium bacteria. So we need nitrogen, we need oxygen in order for us to be able to survive. Some of those nitrates, right, will get washed into. We looked at the dead zone of, here's the Gulf of Mexico, for example, down here. So again, we have to make sure that we're not putting nitrates into the soil that don't belong there, or we're going to end up with these, they're called algal blooms, which means that we're getting too many nitrates into the water, which produce a lot of algae. The algae then cuts the dissolved oxygen in the water, and no dissolved oxygen means that the fish can't breathe, and consequently, they're not going to survive. All right, we looked at this last week. And again, we're, just again going over that use that we have because of mass production of chemical pesticides and fertilizers. And we know the problems that are associated with those, right? Pests eventually become resistant to those chemicals, and so now we have to come up with new chemicals. Um, and of course, those chemicals are going to not only kill the pests that we don't want, but they're also going to kill the pests that we do want, like the praying mantis, the ladybug beetle, um, this particular type of wasp. These are all things that we want to make sure that we keep. And of course, we want to keep the honeybee and the bumblebee, whatever we want to call it, and keep that healthy because that's at the top of a lot of food chains because they are pollinators and we need pollinators in order to survive. So that's what we're doing. We got basically about 100 different crops that we grow here in the United States. Huge industry. Has to be something that we want to preserve, right? Because we need food. But we can also, look at ways where we're not using chemicals. So next week we'll take a look at farming that is organic in nature, and we'll look a little bit at what it means to farm locally and what it means to be organic. So we'll take a look at all of that starting next week. Again, if you have any questions for me, please drop me an email, and I'll post the next set of omnivore questions, as well as a quick little video for you to take a look at. I hope you guys have a good week. Starting to heat up out there, so be careful. And I will check in with you later. Have a good week, guys.